Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Megan Landowski. The case of Megan Landowski, who lived near the Chesapeake Bay in Portsmouth, Virginia, a bustling seaport town that is home to both the U.S. Navy and Coast Guard. Megan's family included Navy officer Chris Short, his wife Angela, and their three stepchildren, Elizabeth Gable, Megan Landowski, and Corey Landowski. Having spent a year stationed at the naval base in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, Chris was transferred to a naval hospital in Portsmouth, which was a relief for his family. Megan Landowski, the eldest sibling at 16 years old, promptly enrolled in dance classes after their relocation. Megan had a deep passion for dance and exhibited remarkable talent and aptitude from the beginning, starting with ballet and quickly expanding her repertoire to include various dance genres. Her mother described her as beautiful, friendly, and talented, and Megan easily integrated into her new academic environment at Woodrow Wilson High School. Megan had a magnetic personality that effortlessly attracted classmates, allowing her to quickly forge friendships. Although she attended a prestigious high school primarily focused on dance, Megan expressed a desire to attend a regular high school in order to be with friends from her neighborhood. Described as vivacious and kind, Megan had a natural inclination for making connections and embracing friendships with everyone she encountered. Thursday, April 10th, 2008, dawned like any other bright spring morning. Megan woke up early from school, engaging in a conversation with her mother regarding an impending test before heading off for her classes. After exchanging farewells, they went their separate ways, unaware that this would be the last time Angela laid eyes on her daughter alive. Megan's school day ended early, and she went home. Her mother told her to call when she reached home. Upon arrival, Megan left a voicemail detailing how her day went, reassuring her mother of her safe return, and ending by telling her she loved her. She then went on to begin preparing lunch for herself. However, things took a dark and disturbing turn around 4 p.m. that afternoon. Chris, Megan's stepfather, returned home to find the front door open. Though initially unconcerned, knowing Megan had been warned about leaving it open, he intended to reprimand her. Calling out her name yielded only silence as he moved through the house. Upon entering the kitchen, he was confronted with a harrowing sight. Megan, lifeless on the floor, a victim of murder. Chris would later recall how he found her, likening her to a porcelain doll, hauntingly still and staring out into the void. Local detective Doug Funkhauser was on his way to celebrate his anniversary with his wife when he received the distressing call about a young girl's murder in town. Rushing to Roberts Court in Portsmouth, he was confronted with a horrifying sight. Blood stains on the door handle caught his attention as he approached the residence. Inside, in the kitchen, he discovered the gruesome scene. The teenager's partially naked body sprawled on the floor. Megan lay amidst a sizable pool of blood, bearing multiple stab wounds across her back, neck, face, and throat, with her mouth sealed shut with tape. For Detective Funkhauser, a seasoned investigator, this case stood out as one of the most brutal he had ever encountered, compounded by the fact that the victim was a young child. The thought of his own 3 children intensified his determination to bring the perpetrator to justice. Despite Megan not inviting the killer into her house, there were no signs of forced entry. However, a leaf found inside, traced back to the bush by the window, showed that the assailant had entered through the first-floor window. The attack started in an upstairs bedroom, evident from the messy bed that indicated a struggle. Her underwear was on the floor, and a tape dispenser under the left corner of the bed matched the tape used to bind her. Blood-stained tape was collected for analysis. Police took pillows, sheets, and blankets for forensic examination. Disturbing evidence was found in the bedroom. Seminal fluid on the duvet and in Megan's underwear suggested she was sexually assaulted before the brutal attack downstairs. Megan had 43 stab wounds, 11 after her death. She was discovered naked from the waist down, with her arms bound behind her with tape. The forensic team quickly identified the potential murder weapon. They found a knife missing from the kitchen counter holder, eventually locating it in the sink. Megan was first attacked in her room, but escaped downstairs before being fatally assaulted. The perpetrator moved through the house, leaving footprints, and washed their hands in the sink, leaving behind one of the 2 knives used in the murder. The other knife, taken from the kitchen block, was found in a storm drain nearby. Detectives realized they had to apprehend the murderer promptly. The investigation began swiftly, with officers thoroughly searching the area, looking for witnesses who may have seen or heard something suspicious during the crime. Unfortunately, no one provided any useful information, and it seemed like the culprit had fled unnoticed. The town was gripped by fear, with parents worried about their children's safety, many too scared to sleep at night, aware that a killer was on the loose. After their daughter's murder, Angela and Chris quickly told the police they suspected Robert Hickey, a friend of Chris from the Navy who had a troubled past. When Megan was 16, Robert, who also worked with Chris, sexually assaulted her. Megan started acting differently and doing poorly in school. Chris noticed and asked her what was wrong. Eventually, Megan admitted that Robert was abusing her. Chris was angered and disgusted, immediately cutting off all connections with the Hickey family and reporting the abuse. At this point, Megan's parents had initiated legal action just 5 months before her murder, with a trial awaiting. They now suspected that Robert had killed Megan to prevent her from testifying against him, fearing the potential damage to his reputation and the risk of incarceration. Megan had even voiced concerns about him coming after her, and tragically, it appeared her apprehensions had materialized. Officers went to Hickey's house looking for evidence related to a murder, but they didn't find anything incriminating. However, when they checked his computer later on, they saw that someone had tried to delete everything on the hard drive. A file that had been recently deleted was found, showing illegal pictures of underage kids. This led to Hickey being charged with having child pornography and made him the main suspect in the murder case. He was brought in for questioning regarding the murder, with authorities hoping for a confession. Despite appearing visibly nervous during the interview, Robert claimed to have been at the Navy base the entire day of Megan's murder, denying any involvement and asserting that he had not left the base on the day of the incident. After corroborating his timeline with his colleagues, the police realized that there was a period of time during which Robert hadn't been seen, raising the possibility of his involvement in the murder. Surveillance footage from the base was obtained, but no sign of Robert leaving was observed. Nevertheless, he remained a suspect and couldn't be entirely ruled out. A DNA swab was taken from Robert to compare with the DNA found at the crime scene, and the results came as a surprise. There was no match. Robert was not Megan's killer. This setback left the officers feeling disheartened as they found themselves without any leads or suspects. Attention then shifted towards Chris, who had discovered her body. After obtaining a DNA sample, he was quickly ruled out as a suspect. Additionally, all of Megan's family members, including her younger brother Corey, were also cleared of any involvement. An autopsy later revealed the extreme brutality of the murder, with Megan being subjected to what was termed as overkill. The level of violence suggested intense anger from the perpetrator, raising questions about their motive given Megan's popularity and apparent lack of enemies. It seemed likely that the culprit was someone known to her, but with no apparent enemies, the mystery deepened regarding who would commit such a horrific act. As the investigation yielded no suspects, Megan's parents grappled with the unsettling prospect of her case remaining unresolved, depriving them of justice for their daughter. Detectives decided to delve deeper into Megan's school life, considering the possibility of a clandestine boyfriend, an admirer, or an adversary within her school community. They interrogated Megan's close friend in hopes of uncovering potential leads, but she was unable to provide any valuable insights. Subsequently, police interviewed other acquaintances from Woodrow Wilson High School, revealing that Megan had been involved in a few romantic relationships, but none of them were particularly serious. While none of these individuals emerged as suspects, the authorities decided to collect DNA samples from them as a precautionary measure to eliminate any potential connections. Forensic experts specializing in biogeographical analysis re-examined the DNA evidence collected from the crime scene in an effort to determine the geographical origin of the perpetrator. Their analysis suggested that they were searching for an African-American male. Despite 6 months elapsing with no significant progress in the case, a breakthrough occurred when a cooperative classmate provided the police with valuable information: a list of boys with whom Megan had occasionally engaged in flirtatious interactions. Upon review, all individuals on the list except one had already been interviewed. This exception was 17-year-old Robert Lee Barnes. In addition to her regular school education, Megan had also been enrolled in a performing arts program at Churchill High School, where Robert Barnes was also a participant. Megan had once told her close friend that she believed Robert had feelings for her, feelings she did not reciprocate. Robert Barnes, a talented violinist, was regarded as a diligent student who never encountered any disciplinary issues at school and was not known to cause trouble. He shared a close friendship with Megan and had even visited her home on several occasions, according to her parents, who described him as always polite and very kind. When the police located him for questioning regarding Megan, the interview followed the standard procedure, just like the other previous interviews they had carried out. Robert informed investigators that Megan was a kind and pleasant individual, expressing disbelief at the notion of anyone wishing her harm. He mentioned their participation in a recital together and their occasional hangouts. The police did not find anything suspicious during the interview until towards the end, when they asked Robert if he would provide a DNA sample. Robert hesitated before refusing, which raised eyebrows among the investigators, since all of Megan's other classmates had been cooperative. Robert politely explained that his mother wouldn't agree to it, but the police clarified that parental consent wasn't necessary, especially considering Robert was now 17 years old. Despite this, Robert declined once again. The investigators couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss with Robert Barnes. After concluding the interview, they instructed him to seek his mother's consent for the DNA sample and to contact them afterward. Later, the detective received a call from the lab analyzing the bubble gum. They inquired about the sample's origin and, after confirming that he had observed Robert placing the gum into the glove, questioned whether he had been under constant observation. To their surprise, the DNA the sample matched that of a female. Robert had switched the gum he was chewing with a different piece that he provided as his sample on October 23, 2008. Robert Barnes was summoned for questioning once more, this time accompanied by his mother. During the interview, when confronted with the DNA findings, Robert inadvertently revealed that the incident had occurred on a Thursday. Up to that point, none of the individuals interviewed by the police had been aware of the exact day and date of the murder. When the officers pointed this out to him, he provided an absurd explanation, claiming that on that particular day, Megan had asked him to come to her home, where he allegedly discovered her being held at gunpoint by a masked individual. According to Robert, the assailant then pointed the firearm at him and forced him to tie Megan up. Robert further claimed that he was compelled to sexually assault Megan under duress. Subsequently, he stated that they all went downstairs, where the gunman seized a knife and stabbed Megan. Robert claimed that the assailant then forced him to cut himself, ensuring his blood would be found at the crime scene. Robert had fabricated this narrative in an attempt to present himself as a victim and explain away any potentially incriminating evidence against him. However, law enforcement remained skeptical of his account and did not believe any of his claims. When confronted with the evidence of footprints, they questioned why only his footprints were found and not those of the alleged assailant. Robert's mother intervened, advising him to stop speaking and vouching for his character, claiming he was a good and innocent child. The police collected a sample of his DNA, and the analysis confirmed a match between Robert's DNA and the assailant, contradicting his claims. Robert Barnes was arrested for the murder of Megan Landowski. The news left Megan's parents in shock, as they could not comprehend how the quiet boy who used to ride the school bus with their daughter could be capable of such violence. According to the police, Robert likely gained entry to the home through the window that afternoon, surprising Megan in her bedroom before committing the atrocious acts. Megan managed to flee downstairs, but Robert pursued her, stabbing her with a kitchen knife and continuing to do so even after her death. Afterward, he left the scene and carried on with his life, as if nothing had occurred. The investigators speculated that Robert had developed an unhealthy obsession with Megan, while Megan only wanted a platonic relationship between them. When Robert's advances were rejected, he resorted to coercion, which ultimately led him down a destructive path that culminated in tragedy. In September 2009, Robert accepted a plea bargain that spared him from being tried as an adult, as he had recently turned 18. He pleaded guilty to charges of first-degree murder and aggravated sexual battery. Robert Lee Barnes was sentenced to 42 years in prison and remains incarcerated at the Red Onion State Prison in Wise County, Virginia. Whether driven by love, desire, bitterness, or the sting of rejection, Robert's actions and atrocious deeds towards someone he claimed to love and care for were not justified. Instead of accepting to move on, he chose a dark path that led to a tragic fate, ending the life of an innocent soul, and, in the process, ruining his life and affecting the lives of Megan's loved ones. Megan Landowski's tragic story mirrors countless others, highlighting the perilous consequences that can arise from such situations. We extend our heartfelt prayers and thoughts to her departed soul and the loved ones she left behind.
Take a look at this photo. It shows Rexford Lynn Keel Jr., better known as Lynn Keel, and his wife Elizabeth Bess Edwards Keel. They were married for over 20 years. In 2005, Lynn worked as a truck driver and Elizabeth was an employee of Microbac Laboratories. Probably many of us have pictures that, when we look at them, we realize that shortly after the picture was taken, the lives of the people depicted in it changed dramatically. These words can be fully applied to this one as well. Lynn and Elizabeth lived in this house, which is located in Nash County, North Carolina. As you can see on the map, the place is quite secluded. As 2005 drew to a close, Lynn and Elizabeth, like many people, were making plans for the next year. But on January 1st, 2006, trouble came to their house. It was cold, and the steps outside the house were covered in ice. As Elizabeth was leaving the house, she slipped and fell, hitting her head hard on the corner of the concrete steps. The injury she sustained was fatal. The medical examiner who performed the autopsy concluded that Elizabeth had died from a blunt force trauma to the head, and her death was ruled an accident. For her husband, relatives, colleagues, and friends, Elizabeth's sudden death was a great shock. She was only 42 years old. About 1 year passed and Lynn Keel decided to move on. He was no longer a truck driver, but worked in real estate. In 2007, he visited Latin America in a work-related visit. On that trip, Lynn, who was 45 years old at the time, met Diana, who was 19 years his junior. Diana was from Bogota, Colombia. She was strikingly beautiful, kind, and a single mom with a daughter. The relationship between them quickly developed, and with her thoughts of the American dream, Diana moved to the United States. She and Lynn began living in his home in Nash County, where about a year earlier, his wife Elizabeth Keel had died in an accident. It wasn't long before Diana and Lynn were married, and a short time later the couple had a son named Max. In 2017, Diana graduated from Nash Community College. That same year, she began working as an emergency room nurse at Wilson Medical Center. The first few years of their life together were nothing special, but over time their relationship began to deteriorate. Diana told her close friend that Lynn was an overbearing man who spoke sharply to her and very often verbally abused her. The atmosphere in the house was almost always very tense. Lynn would not allow Diana to be alone with anyone for long periods of time. She began to think about divorce, but she was afraid of her husband because he threatened her. He manipulated her with the baby. He threatened her and told her that if she left him, he would deport her and that she would never see her son again. Diana put up with it all because her children came first for her, but everyone's patience comes to an end sooner or later. In 2019, Diana's daughter Laura was 18, a graduate of Southern Nash High School and a freshman at the University of North Carolina at Wilmington, and 10-year-old Max was living with his parents. As I said, Diana worked as a nurse at Wilson Medical Center. She was loved and respected by patients and colleagues alike. On March 7, 2019, Diana's mother, Esperanza Prada, who lived in Colombia, received a message in which Diana wrote, "Mom, I love you very much." The message came completely out of the blue. Esperanza knew her daughter didn't have a happy marriage and that she wanted to divorce her husband but was afraid of him. It was only 3 days after that, and Diana's daughter Laura sounded the alarm. On March 10th, she tweeted out a plea for help to find her mother. The message said, "This is insane. You see this happen to everyone else, and you don't think it's ever going to happen to you guys. My mom is missing. If you see or hear anything, please let me know. And please retweet this. Help me get the word out. Thank you." That same day, Laura called the medical center where her mother worked, but none of Diana's co-workers had spoken to her in the past 2 days. An employee of the medical center called the police and asked for a welfare check on Diana. A co-worker told the dispatcher that Diana hadn't been heard from in 2 days. "She was supposed to work tonight. She's on the schedule," the Wilson Medical Center nurse said. "She's the type of co-worker. She's always like 30 minutes early. And if you text her, she replies back like reasonably. She has not done any of them." The woman said it was out of character for Diana and asked the sheriff's office to perform a welfare check. Diana was a devoted mother who was in touch with her family every day. She checked her social media regularly, but now her messages went unread and her FaceTime calls unanswered. When a police officer arrived at the Keel family home, Lynn was there. It was surprising that his wife's disappearance had been reported to the police by her co-workers, not him. Lynn told the police officer that he had last seen Diana 2 days earlier, on March 8th, when she left the house. Her car was still parked outside the house, which also aroused suspicion, so Lynn was called in for questioning. When questioned, Keel, 57, said his wife had gone out to run some errands and hadn't returned. He said she would leave from time to time and wouldn't return for several days. It was a statement that didn't ring true. Without any charges, the man was released. Diana was reported missing and the police began searching for her. Investigators were able to determine that the woman had not used her cell phone or bank cards in the past few days, and that was not a good sign. This house, as I said at the beginning of the video, is in a secluded location, and there are no neighbors to share any important information with the police. Nevertheless, detectives learned that on the morning of March 8th, the couple was seen having a heated argument on their front porch. A courier had delivered a package addressed to Diana that day, and he was the last person to see her, not counting Lynn Keel, of course. After the police interviewed Diana's co-workers, who told them that she was having problems with her husband, there was no doubt that she would not abandon her son and run away. The only thing that stopped her from divorcing was the fear of losing custody of her 10-year-old son. Everyone the detectives spoke to named only one person they thought might have been involved in Diana's disappearance. That person was her husband, Lynn Keel. Early in the investigation, an ominous discovery was made. 2 years before Diana went missing, Lynn had insured her life for more than $1 million, and he was the sole beneficiary of this insurance. In 2008, sheriff's deputies responded to a domestic dispute in the house, although no further action was taken. Only 2 days had passed since the investigation began, and the police received a disturbing call. During the emergency call, a man, later identified as an employee of the North Carolina Department of Transportation, said he found something on Polk's Hole Road. "It looks like something is laying in the woods," he said. "I don't know what it is. A body, a something, I don't know." "How far down is it?" the dispatcher asked. "Right here at the end," the caller said. "I will be waiting right here." Unfortunately, what the man who called the police saw was Diana's body, which from the looks of it had been there since the day she disappeared. It turned out that the worker was checking an illegal dump when he saw something suspicious. Polk's Hole Road is a dead-end street leading to farmland, and the fact that the body was found was fortunate, if fortunate is the right word under the circumstances. Who knows how long it would have taken the police to find Diana's body, for it was 30 miles away from her home. "I've heard nobody that knew her had anything negative to say about this woman," Nash County Sheriff Keith Stone said. "What a tragic event. Even more tragic, we now have a 10-year-old without a mom." Stone added, "It's very difficult, especially when I see life as it is and how fragile it is. And now we have a kid without a mother. It's very difficult. We have a lot of unanswered questions. That's the reason we, as the Nash County Sheriff's Office, operate with compassion, honor, and diligence. Although it remains unclear how the woman died, there is definitely foul play involved." The police had only one suspect, Lynn Keel. When he was informed that his wife had been found dead, he was very surprised. He was brought to the station for questioning, where he answered to investigators. He claimed, as before, that Diana had often gone away for several days, but that she had always returned. These words were inconsistent with what Diana's colleagues, relatives, and friends had said. Everyone knew that Lynn Keel controlled his wife's every move. He even forbade her to see her friends. After the interrogation, the man was released because the results of the autopsy had not yet been obtained. 2 days after the discovery of the body, authorities officially confirmed that the body was that of Diana Alejandra Keel. Her death was a painful blow to her children, family, and friends. Diana's daughter, Laura, created a GoFundMe page to help cover the funeral costs. "My priorities now are to make sure my mother is laid to rest in a manner much more fitting than her death, and to make sure my brother continues to feel the love that our mother shared with us daily," she wrote. "By doing so, I hope to honor my mother's legacy." Diana's cousin living in Columbia told reporters that the mother of two came to North Carolina to live the American dream, but it ended up being a nightmare. "I can't believe it," said Javier Guevara. "I can't believe it. It's very, very sad." After the medical examiner's report was obtained, the frightening details of Diana's death became known. She had extensive skull fractures as well as multiple sharp injuries on the left side of her face and neck. Some of the injuries were post-mortem, which could mean that the person who inflicted them had a personal grudge against Diana. By the time police arrived to arrest Lynn Keel and search his home, he had gone on the run. He was put on a nationwide wanted list, and a report stated that he might be driving a gold-colored pickup truck and warned that he might be dangerous. It was learned that after Lynn Keel left the police station after being questioned, he drove his 10-year-old son to his parents' home, took his father's car, and fled. According to a warrant to search the home Diana and Lynn Keel shared, authorities seized a variety of firearms, including rifles, pistols, and revolvers. Also seized were swords, a machete, and several knives. Warrants show that authorities found 2 pages from a diary belonging to Diana Keel's 18-year-old daughter inside a Dodge Ram Lynn Keel owned. When the sheriff was asked about their contents, he replied that he did not feel comfortable divulging what was written on those pages. Meanwhile, the search for Lynn Keel continued. It was determined that he had left the state, but his whereabouts were unknown. Stone said the sheriff's office had received calls from Texas and Florida about Keel's truck, but no additional details about his capture were confirmed. He asked the public to drive by local motels and hotels and see if they would notice a pickup truck with the license plate number listed on the information sheet distributed. "We have no idea where he might be," he said. "This is an opportunity for the public to help because this person is dangerous." On March 17, 2019, 5 days after Diana's body was discovered, Lynn Keel was seized by Arizona State Police 34 miles from the U.S. border with Mexico. He was in possession of a large sum of cash and a large quantity of various canned goods. He was allegedly planning to cross the border and escape into Mexican territory. After his arrest, Lynn Keel was airlifted to Nash County, where he was charged in connection with the death of his wife, Diana. Experts believed she was still alive when she was loaded into her own SUV, driven into the woods, and left for dead. Lynn Keel was therefore also charged with kidnapping. When searching the house, forensic investigators found overwhelming evidence that the attack on Diana took place in the bedroom. According to the prosecutor, after taking Diana to a remote area, Keel went to a local Walmart where he bought cleaning supplies, with which he tried to cover up evidence of the crime. After he was arrested, Diana's daughter, Laura, wrote the following words on her Facebook account. "I know everyone has a certain feeling towards what my stepdad did to my family. However, I beg all of you not to spread hate. My brother has such a pure heart that he doesn't need to see that hate. We all need to focus on how wonderful my mother was to heal us as best we can." The brutal nature of the crime and Keel's subsequent flight from justice drew local, state, and national media attention to the case. The media attention caused the public defender at the time to ask for a change in venue so that a jury pool could be selected outside of Nash County. Despite the widespread nature of the media attention focused on the crime, the motion for a change in venue focused specifically on the perceptions in Nash County. The media coverage included, among other things, press conferences by the Nash County Sheriff, many written articles in local newspapers, online articles, television coverage, as well as social media discussion. Discussion in the media included speculation surrounding the passing of the defendant's previous wife, the motion stated. The state objected to the motion, but did note that the state had concerns over efficiency and a waste of resources and time should a trial begin in Nash County and then be required to be transferred to another venue after the trial process begins in Nash County, the motion stated. In the end, Nash County Superior Court Judge Quentin Sumner decided to move the venue to Pitt County. In the document outlining his decision, Sumner stated that there exists in Nash County a prejudice against this defendant so that he cannot obtain a fair and impartial trial within Nash County. In October 2021, Rexford Lynn Keel, 59, pleaded no contest to the charges against him to avoid a lengthy trial. A no contest plea, similar to a guilty plea, means that the defendant accepts responsibility for the charge. Keel pled to second-degree murder and first-degree kidnapping. Keel's defense attorneys asked that the judge takes into account that he has been experiencing kidney failure and has been incarcerated for the past 2 years. But at sentencing, Diana's mother reminded the court of the reason her daughter was no longer alive. She said she wanted to tell women that if their partner was abusive, they needed to run. "Don't stay there," she begged, as she asked the judge for a severe sentence. "I want you to have the same compassion for Keel that he had when he killed her." Diana's cousin released the following statement. "From all of Diana Alejandra Keel's family, we want to extend a huge thank you to all law enforcement involved in apprehending and bringing Lynn Keel, the suspect in Diana's murder, to face justice. I want to express the immense gratitude our family has felt, including the true empathy from the Nash County Sheriff's Office, along with so many heartfelt messages of support and love since this nightmare began. We know Diana Alejandra has been seen by the public for the amazing mother, daughter, sister, cousin, friend, and co-worker that she was. She loved her two children more than I can ever express. Everything she did was for them. She brought joy into this world with her contagious laugh, bright smile, and huge heart for others, including animals. To all that knew her, and those that would have liked to have known her, please think of her and her children only with the kindest thoughts and positive energy possible. Thank you so much for your continued support. Lynn Keel did not say what the motive for the crime was. Perhaps he learned that Diana was meeting with a lawyer and wanted to begin divorce proceedings. We should also not forget the insurance policy worth more than $1 million. Under the plea agreement, Lynn Keel was sentenced to between 32 and 41 years in prison. But that's not all. Police had questions relating to the death of Lynn Keel's first wife, Elizabeth. Was her death really an accident? Her family said they always had questions about her death. In a statement, Elizabeth Keel's family said they have always questioned Bess's death and feel deeply saddened that another life has now been taken. We're going to work all the leads on that, and we're going to go back and look at the information we had on the first incident reports, Stone said. We're going to talk with the district attorney's office. It's something that we need to be looking at. Elizabeth Keel is buried in a family plot in Spring Hope. Stone said right now he is working with a pathologist and going over all of the evidence, who said there is a strong possibility they will exhume Elizabeth Keel's body. Dr. John Butts was the chief medical examiner in North Carolina for 24 years. One would only go to exhume a body if there was some question that wasn't addressed at the time that could be addressed by re-examining the remains, Butts said. According to him, there have been many cases in his career where a death deemed accidental turned out to be murder. Someone falls off of something and was killed, and then additional information turns out that they didn't fall. They were pushed, and there would be no difference in examination. We'd have the same findings, but of course now the circumstances leading up to why it happened have changed, Butts said. No new information related to the death of Elizabeth Keel has appeared over the past 2 years. We can assume that authorities have found no reason to reopen the investigation and exhume the body, but it is possible that we will hear more about this case in the future.
In 2013, Jessica Harringer, a 25-year-old woman, disappeared under circumstances from her workplace. The search for her kidnapper spanned several years, during which numerous other women were affected. When the authorities finally apprehended the culprit by chance, they uncovered deeply disturbing details about him. Jessica Harringer was born on July 16, 1987, and resided in Norton Shores, Michigan. She grew up in a modest family with a sister. At 22, Jessica became a mother to a son named Zine, fathered by her long-term partner Dakota Quayle Dyer. They were still together in 2013, living in a leased home. At the age of 25, Jessica worked at an Exxon gas station in Norton Shores, located near Lake Michigan. Known for her warm and friendly nature as a manager, she often received praise from customers. To support her cherished 3-year-old son, she frequently took on extra hours. Jessica's diary highlighted her ambitions to learn and advance. She aspired to pursue college studies in accounting, but financial constraints hindered this goal. Dakota was unable to fully support their family, leading to frequent disputes and turmoil in their relationship. The couple was engaged, yet their marriage faced repeated delays due to various factors. On the evening of April 26, 2013, Jessica Harringer was carrying out her regular duties at the Exxon gas station. Her day began with a visit to a nearby store around 3 p.m., followed by a drive to her workplace. She arrived at the gas station around 4:35 p.m., parked her car and started her night shift, which was supposed to end at 11:30 p.m. Jessica was the sole employee on duty that night. At 11:14 p.m., a customer called emergency services reporting his experience at the Exxon station. He had entered the store to pay for his gas in cash but found it unattended. He informed the dispatcher, "I'm not sure what's going on, but there's no one at the station. The door is open and unlocked. Lights are still on, but there's no one to take my payment. There are just my car and another vehicle outside. Why isn't anyone here?" It looks very odd. The police reached the Exxon gas station within 10 minutes of the 911 call. During their inspection of the premises, both inside and outside, they found no evidence of a struggle. Everything seemed orderly. Jessica's coat was in the back room, along with her purse containing $400, car and house keys. A solitary drop of blood, later identified as Jessica's, was discovered near the storage area's back door. Additionally, a cap from a Walther P22 semi-automatic pistol's laser sight and 2 batteries, likely for a watch, were found on the floor. The gas station's cash register remained undisturbed with all the money intact. The last recorded transaction was at 10:52 p.m. for a lighter. The facility lacked interior surveillance cameras. Positioned next to the cash register was Jessica's pack of cigarettes, suggesting she had briefly left her station with the intention of returning soon. Her locked car was parked outside, but Jessica was nowhere to be seen. She had inexplicably disappeared. Upon discovering the station unattended, police reached out to the gas station's owner, informing them of the situation. The owner subsequently contacted another manager living close by, requesting her to secure the premises. Additionally, the police notified Jessica's family of her disappearance. Her parents sought clues to her whereabouts and called her friends. One friend recalled being at the gas station between 8 and 9 p.m. that day, noting that all appeared normal then. Shortly after, a fellow employee arrived to lock up the station. This colleague recounted that around 11 p.m., she and her boyfriend had driven by the station on a motorcycle. They spotted a silver Chrysler Town & Country minivan parked near the rear service door with its back door open. Suspecting Jessica might be involved in theft from the station, they paused to observe further developments. The manager observed a young man with disheveled wavy hair near the minivan, dressed in an orange sweatshirt. She saw him repeatedly open and close the vehicle's rear door before he finally drove off. Police reviewing surveillance footage from surrounding buildings located a video showing a silver Chrysler passing by Exxon gas station at 11:02 p.m. A store employee nearby also spoke to the police, mentioning that he had seen the man in the minivan conversing with Jessica Christian. The employee initially thought the stranger was merely flirting with Jessica, given her attractiveness. He noted Jessica standing outside, while the man questioned why she wasn't inside. Both Christian and Jessica's colleague, who had spotted the man by the minivan, contributed to creating a composite sketch of the unidentified individual. He was depicted as a light-complexioned young male with dark wavy hair, a stocky build, and approximately 1.82 meters in height. The sketch was released 3 days following Jessica's disappearance. Despite numerous calls received by police in response, no significant leads emerged from the information provided. The prevalence of the silver Chrysler minivan in the United States posed a considerable obstacle in the investigation. In Michigan alone, there were approximately 15,000 vehicles of this kind registered. Identifying the specific driver of the minivan linked to Jessica Hinger's disappearance became a daunting challenge given the vast number of identical models. Initially, Jessica's boyfriend Dakota Quayle D. was a suspect in her disappearance. He acknowledged their frequent arguments, but denied ever physically harming her. Dakota actively cooperated with the investigation, informing police that he was at home with their 3-year-old son on the night Jessica vanished. Without access to a car, he couldn't have traveled to her workplace, and his phone records, once verified by detectives, confirmed his presence at home that evening. This led to his exclusion from the suspect list. The investigation revealed that Jessica had numerous admirers due to her amiable and outgoing personality, which sometimes led to misunderstandings. One such admirer was Jess Ammerman, a 37-year-old married plumber. He visited Jessica at the gas station around 9:30 p.m. on the day she disappeared and confessed his love and willingness to divorce his wife for her. However, Jessica rebuffed his advances. Jess then left the station and called his wife. They spoke for about 50 minutes before he returned home. Following his interrogation, a polygraph test, and an interview with his wife, Jess Ammerman was also eliminated as a suspect. Rob Fallett, the brother of the Exxon gas station's manager, subsequently emerged as another individual involved in this case, though context-wise specifics about Rob's involvement were not provided. Identified as the next suspect, he mentioned visiting the gas station around 9 p.m. on the day Jessica disappeared. Upon greeting her, he noticed she seemed downcast. Asking about her mood, Jessica confided in having family troubles. Rob suggested she could stay with him, but she declined. After a short while at the station and making a purchase, Rob left for a night fishing trip at the lake. Detectives checked Rob's phone records for that evening, which corroborated his account of leaving the gas station for fishing. Consequently, Rob Fallett was eliminated from the suspect list. Search and rescue operations for Jessica Heeringer were launched using helicopters, expertly trained canines, and extensive searches of residential and commercial properties, woods, and Lake Michigan. Despite these exhaustive efforts, no leads were found, leading to an impasse in the case. Nearly a year later, in February 2014, a similar event occurred in Michigan. A small blonde, bespectacled woman was assaulted by a man while returning home late at night. She was kidnapped, taken to his apartment, and attacked. Despite threats to her life, she was released after several hours. The perpetrator was identified as 42-year-old Brad Allen Mason. Mason was swiftly located, but resisted arrest by brandishing a fake firearm at police officers, resulting in his fatal shooting. Mason had a history of criminal activity, including a 2004 kidnapping conviction and a 2011 arrest for indecent exposure. In 2014, he resided in a dormitory opposite the Exxon gas station where Jessica worked. However, investigators found no evidence linking Mason to Jessica's disappearance. 2 years after Jessica Heeringer's disappearance, in 2016, another incident involving a young woman occurred late at night. Returning from a party at a friend's house, she became disoriented on a dark street. A man in a silver minivan approached her asking if she was okay and offering her a ride. She refused, but requested to use his phone instead. The man consented, but only if she entered the minivan. Once inside, he locked the door and revealed his phone battery was dead, then brandished a gun, instructing her to stay silent. These cases highlight ongoing challenges faced by law enforcement in solving abduction instances, despite rigorous investigative efforts and community cooperation. He then began driving, feeling sick and nauseated. The woman requested him to lower the window. Seizing the opportunity, she leaped out of the moving vehicle through the window and fled to a nearby house. The man sped away. The victim immediately contacted the police and described kidnapper. Through surveillance footage, the police managed to trace the license plate of the silver Chrysler Town & Country. They identified the driver as 46-year-old Jeffrey Willis. Jeffrey Willis, a factory laborer, led a secluded, modest life and had no prior legal issues. When located in his minivan, police searched and found a Walther P22 semi-automatic pistol. The gun was traced back to a colleague of Jeff, who had reported her laser-sighted gun stolen some time ago. Willis was arrested and detained. A search of his residence uncovered a box filled with various BDSM paraphernalia, including handcuffs, chains, ropes, gags, a vibrator, a video camera, and a bullet matching a Walther P22. The box also contained insulin syringes with an unidentified liquid, sedatives, Viagra, lubricant, disposable gloves, and a diagram of a woman's anatomy with marked injection sites. On his computer were numerous videos depicting appalling kidnapping scenes with young women as victims. A hidden hard drive in a ventilation duct contained footage Willis had recorded of his female neighbors swimming without their knowledge. A folder titled Victims on the computer held 2 subfolders, one named for the missing Jessica Heeringer and another for a murdered woman named Rebecca. Rebecca Bletch, aged 36, was tragically murdered on June 29, 2014, roughly a year after Jessica Heeringer vanished in an area just 20 minutes from where Jessica worked at the Exxon gas station. Rebecca went out for an evening run, but never made it back home. She was found by neighbors lying on the road with her clothing disheveled. Initially leading to the belief that she was struck by a car Although unconscious, Rebecca still had a pulse when discovered. Emergency services were called, but she succumbed to her injuries before they could save her. Autopsy reports revealed she died from 3 gunshot wounds to her back and head, with multiple bruises on her wrists and legs. At the time of her death, the perpetrator remained at large. However, 2 years after Jeffrey Willis's arrest, new evidence linked Rebecca's murder to a pistol found in Willis's minivan. Willis denied any involvement, but prosecutors theorized that he had attempted to abduct Rebecca and bring her to his home. When Rebecca resisted, Willis reportedly shot her and fled. Forensic analysis later discovered Rebecca's DNA on a glove recovered from Willis's residence. Jeffrey Willis was convicted of Rebecca Bletch's murder and received a life sentence. While serving his sentence, he faced additional charges related to the kidnapping of Jessica Heiringer. Despite consistently denying any involvement in Jessica's disappearance, phone records showed that on the night she vanished, he was present at the Exxon gas station where she was last seen. Subsequently, he traveled to his deceased grandfather's house, which is roughly 13 minutes from the station. Upon arriving at his grandfather's residence, police encountered a heavily secured front door. Forced entry revealed an assortment of cleaning products, powders, and bleaches in the basement. The manufacturing dates on these items aligned with early 2013, matching the time frame of Jessica's disappearance. Colleagues recalled that Jeffrey Willis was notably absent on April 27, 2013, the day following Jessica Heiringer's disappearance. When he returned to work a few days later, he had conspicuous deep scratches on his face and hands, raising further suspicions among those who knew him. A woman who visited the gas station on April 25th, the day before Jessica's disappearance, later contacted police. She arrived late in the evening and expressed concern about being there alone at such an hour to Jessica herself. Jessica nodded in acknowledgement, appearing anxious and somewhat scared. At that moment, an unknown man inside the station reassured the visitor by saying, "Don't worry, she has customers who look after her." He left the premises. The concerned visitor, still worried about Jessica's safety, stayed in her car outside until Jessica finished her shift and headed home. Tragically, Jessica disappeared the following day in 2016. The witness from the gas station positively identified Jeffrey Willis, recalling seeing him there. Investigators learned that Willis had frequented the Exxon gas station, interacting with Jessica Heiringer on at least 15 occasions. Concurrently, 48-year-old Kevin Bloom, Willis's cousin and a prison guard, was taken into custody. Kevin's inconsistent statements during interrogation eventually led to a confession. He disclosed information about Rebecca Bletch's death that hadn't been publicly known. Kevin also confessed to assisting Jeffrey in concealing Jessica's body. He described how on April 27th, the day after Jessica's abduction, Jeffrey invited him over for a party at his house. Upon arriving at his late grandfather's residence, Kevin saw Jessica for the first time lying on the floor, bound and lifeless. The cousins wrapped her body in a sheet, transported it in a car to a forest where Jeffrey had pre-dug a grave and buried her. They then returned home. When Kevin Bloom led the police to the forest to identify the burial site of Jessica Heiringer's body, he spent a considerable amount of time wandering through the area. Despite his efforts, he was unable to pinpoint the precise location where they had buried the body. The trial of Jeffrey Willis commenced despite Jessica Heiringer's body not being found either alive or deceased. The prosecution presented substantial evidence to charge Willis with her kidnapping and murder. Their case posited that Willis had been stalking Jessica for an extended period. On the night of April 26, 2013, he allegedly parked his vehicle near the service entrance of the gas station. Entering the premises, he is said to have struck Jessica on the head with his gun. During this assault, it's reported that the cover of the gun's laser sight fell off, and Jessica's blood was spilled on the floor. Willis then purportedly dragged Jessica out through the service exit and placed her in the back seat of his car. He transported her to his late grandfather's house, where he committed his most horrific acts. Forensic computer analysis revealed that Jeffrey Willis stored photographs and news articles about the search for Jessica on his computer. Following the investigation's progress, it was discovered Willis used a password displayed on the screen consisting of Jessica's initials and the date April 27, 2013, presumed to be the day she died. Willis consistently denied his guilt, insisting he was at home on the night of her kidnapping. His lawyers argued that there was no direct evidence linking him to the case. No DNA belonging to Jessica was found in Willis's house or car. The defense team suggested that her disappearance might be linked to illegal drug trafficking, since Dakota had mentioned Jessica developed a serious substance abuse problem. Despite these arguments, Jeffrey Willis was convicted of murdering Jessica Heeringer and received a life sentence without parole. Throughout the trial, he displayed neither remorse nor empathy. His cousin, Kevin Bloom, was found guilty of assisting in disposing of Jessica's body. Kevin received a sentence of 2 years in prison and 5 years probation. Suspension from his role in the prison system was yet another blow to Jeffrey Willis. Years after his conviction, the narrative around him took a startling twist. He became a suspect in an older, unresolved case. On October 17, 1996, in Fruitport, Michigan, Angela Thorburg, a young woman, was found dead. Her remained at large. Ed Willis, who graduated from the same high school as Angela in 1988, found himself linked to her 1996 murder. In that year, 28-year-old Willis worked as a janitor at his alma mater. Concerns were raised when the principal noticed his excessive time spent in the computer lab during work hours. A check on his computer activities was initiated by the principal. Although the findings remain undisclosed, Willis was asked to resign immediately following the review. The investigation into Angela's murder continues to be shrouded in secrecy. A decade has passed since Jessica Heeringer's disappearance, and her remains are still undiscovered. This tragedy sparked a legal battle over the custody of her son Zan between Jessica's sister and Dakota, her partner. Ultimately, Jessica's biological family is raising Zan. In addition to custody disputes, Jessica's parents have been key advocates for legislative changes following their daughter's disappearance. Their efforts led to the enactment of a law mandating gas stations operating at night to install surveillance cameras. The goal is to prevent similar incidents in the future.